The fall lawn care season is upon us, and I've been getting a lot of questions about what I do as my fall program. So today I thought I'd make one video here explaining kind of the whole process of everything that I do in the fall. I've made some videos on these specific topics in the past and kind of made individual videos about each one of those. So if you want some more info on each one of these steps, I do have those from the past. But today let's go over all the steps in one video, give you all the information so that you can improve your yard this fall. First thing I want to make mention of is that this is targeted to cool season grass. It is what I have. So if you have warm season grass, you're in the south, and the fall time is really when things are slowing down. You're about to get to the end of your season, and here in fall for us, we are kind of ramping up into a little bit of a second season. So spring is our most vigorous growth time for cool season grass, and then fall we have another kind of peak season. But fall is actually a really important time for our cool season grass. If we can take care of things, really push some of the growth and give it some nutrients here, going into next spring, you're going to realize all of these benefits and all of the work that you've been doing in the fall. We've talked about dethatching and core aeration quite a bit recently on my channel, but if you want to learn more about those topics, I have some videos specifically on those topics. And quickly, let's just say that this is a great time in fall to dethatch and core aerate your yard. If you have more than a ½ inch of thatch, which is that organic kind of buildup at the soil, it would be a great time to do that. And if you have any compaction going on in your yard, or you're really wanting to spread things and push things, then core aeration can help with this as well. So these two processes would be great to do in this season here, probably coming up as quick as you can get them done, because we need a little bit of recovery time before we get to the colder temperatures as well. The main thing that everybody wants to know about is fertilizer, what kind to use, when to apply it, and how often to apply it. So let's go over all of the fertilizer things here. I focus most of my fertilizing for the year on my cool season lawn into the fall season. I don't do a lot in the spring, and I mainly focus all of my feeding here on the fall time. And the reason for this is that the springtime, we're getting a real flush of growth coming out of winter anyway, and if we're doing our fall program correctly here, you're going to notice in the spring that you're going to have quite a bit of growth from all the work that we did in the fall. So it's not to say that you can't fertilize in the spring, but I usually use lighter amounts in the spring, and especially after you get on this program for a little while and you continually do this each fall, you will notice that you don't need as much work in the spring. So fall for me really doesn't necessarily go by a specific calendar date, but wherever you live in cool season land, you just need to look at what's happening with your weather and look at what's happening with the grass. So as soon as you start to see those high 80s, mid 80s for temperatures start to dip into the upper 70s, you can start to notice the grass is getting a little bit more relief. And if you're also getting some rain during this time frame, then you're going to notice that things are starting to look a little bit better and not as stressed from the summer. This is the exact time when I add my first dose of fall fertilizer. In the past, I'd usually have used Milorganite at this time. The reason being is that I was using Milorganite in my program. This early fall feeding is still great because there's a little bit warmer temperatures. It helps that Milorganite to break down a little bit faster. But we know that Milorganite has been tough to find recently, so if you can't find something like that, you can find other organic products in the store, you can use those. Or this year I've also been using the 818 product on my front yard mainly, kind of testing that out. So it might be something that you want to look into if you are looking for kind of an alternative to Milorganite that also has a lot of iron in it, gives you a great green up, and it's a little bit lower nitrogen, so we don't have any risk there of really pushing things really hard here at the beginning. We're just kind of easing things into the fall season. Then sometimes the weather just tends to be delayed, and this year kind of seems to be exactly what's going on in my exact climate with that. If you are planning on this in the future, look at those late August times if it starts to cool down. What if it doesn't? Right now it's still in the mid 80s for a lot of days here where I'm at, and it's been very dry for the most part. So you can still put down some of that organic type fertilizer. It's not going to hurt anything or burn your yard, but if you're not getting the rain, it would be important to get some irrigation on it to kind of get the yard pushed into the fall season with that fertilizer at that time. So let's go over the least aggressive plan first, and then I'll talk about the most aggressive plan. So the least aggressive plan is going with a half pound of nitrogen every 2 weeks. So after you apply that first organic fertilizer, you would come back 2 weeks later and we would apply a half a pound of nitrogen, and then 2 weeks after that we'd apply another half pound, 2 weeks after that, and that's already getting us into about mid-October. And depending on where you live, the temperatures are going to start to come down probably around that time frame, and you're going to start to notice the grass really slowing down. Continue that nitrogen half pound every 2 weeks until the grass pretty much stops growing. You'll notice this when you go out to mow. There's really nothing coming out of the machine, or you just don't really feel like you're cutting anything off the grass blades. That's naturally when the grass is slowing from the temperatures and also the lack of sunlight happening as we near the winter season. What you use for this fertilizer, I'm not going to tell you there's a specific thing you have to use. I've actually gone to the store and used store-bought stuff before, every 2 weeks before, and I've had okay results. What I would push you towards is using a fast release product if you can, because there's really no point in putting down fertilizer every 2 weeks and having a bunch of slow release in there that is waiting weeks and weeks to actually release itself, because by that time we are going to be into winter and it's not really helping you. So there's different things you can use. So I have some ammonium sulfate, which is 2100. That is also a quick release product, and since my pH in my soil is a little bit high, using that will help to bring it down a little bit as well, which we want to be in the 6 to 7 range. I'm just over 7 right now. These are cheap options and you can go that route if you would like to. Otherwise, go ahead and go to a store and pick up something. And when you go to the store, look at the back of the package and look at the analysis. Now, it's going to have some kind of analysis for what is in there nitrogen-wise, any other things. Sometimes there's going to be phosphorus, sometimes potassium. Right at the bottom is going to say how much percentage is slow release. So if you can find a bag that has as little of this as possible, that's going to be beneficial for you. I've gone to Menards here locally a couple times, used either their brand or something similar to it, and found some that were mainly quick release. There's a little bit of slow release in there, but it's not any drastic amount, so you could definitely go that route if you're looking to buy something in a store. So how do we figure out how much a half pound of nitrogen is in the bag? So let's just use the ammonium sulfate example. So we have 2100. So we're going to take 0.5 because we want half a pound of nitrogen, divide that by the percentage of nitrogen in the bag, which is 21%, so 0.21. 0.5 divided by 0.21 is 2.38. So we need 2.38 pounds of that bag going into our spreader for every 1,000 square feet. So if you have 5,000 square feet, just take 5 times that 2.38, and that will give you how many pounds you need to put into your spreader. And you can measure that all out with the scale. You can be as precise with it as you want. I will tell you in the past that I've not measured things out, and I've pretty much gone off of close to the bag rate and everything is fine. But if you want to understand a little bit more of that, the back of the bag is going to tell you how many pounds per 1,000 square feet it recommends. So on this Menards bag, as an example, let's look at this. We have 3.2 pounds per 1,000 square feet is what it recommends. If they're recommending 3.2 here, we can figure out how much nitrogen that would be going on the ground. So you take 3.2, multiply that times your nitrogen percentage of 28, so 0.28. And if we were applying 3.2 pounds of this product per 1,000 square feet, that would give us 0.9 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000. So all we really need to do there is dial down our spreader a couple notches. So this one recommends 4.25 for a setting on the Scots, which is the spreader that I use. So normally if I wanted to cut it closer to a half, I would probably bring it down to around 3. If that wasn't spreading too much at that point, maybe 3.5. And this is going to get us a close number. What I'm telling you is if you really want to know what you're placing down on the ground, I recommend actually measuring it out and weighing it out. But I know that a lot of you don't have that kind of time, and I know a lot of you aren't interested in all of those tiny little details. So I just wanted to mention it is something that I have done in the past, is kind of looked at the numbers, made a somewhat educated guess on how close it would be if I wanted to do a half a pound. Everything turned out fine, and you're not going over the recommended rate, so you know you're not going over a pound. We're actually going less, so less is better in this case if you're doing it more often. let's say you just got into lawn care this year. I get so many questions from people that say, I just bought a house and the yard wasn't taken care of. Whatever the case is, you really want to make some progress this year. Then we're looking at a more aggressive plan. So before, if we were thinking that maybe September and October we're going to be applying 0.5 every 2 weeks, maybe we can get a total of 2.5 pounds of nitrogen total out of late August to the end of the season. That's a pretty good amount of nitrogen, but we can go higher if we're really trying to push things. This is really the only time I recommend that. I don't do this in my yard anymore. I've added nitrogen enough over the years and built up things over the years that I don't need to go this high of a rate for me, and once you have a really nice established lawn, you will not need to do this either. But if you are wanting to really push things this year, then instead of going 0.5 every 2 weeks, I would go 0.5 every week for September and October. That's, again, my climate. The goal would be then to get more like closer to 4 pounds of nitrogen on during your fall season. Now that is a lot, and what's going to happen during that is you are going to have to mow. And mow a lot, because that heavy feeding is going to start to push things in very quickly, and you need to keep up with consistent mowing. So keep that in mind as well. If you know you're kind of a once a week person that mows, maybe even you can't get to it once a week, I wouldn't really suggest going with the extreme plan, because you're going to have so much growth that you're not going to be able to handle it. If you can handle it and you can get out there 2 times a week, or even more every 2 days if you can, that would be the best case scenario. That's the aggressive plan to give us a lot more nitrogen this fall, really push things into next season. The last thing for fertilizer in the fall is the Winterizer app. This one has been much discussed over the past few years, different university studies, different things that I've heard about. And so last year I did do an app, but I think I moved it down to 0.5 pound. Most people in the past, once the grass would stop growing completely, there was a little bit of a window of time before the ground would freeze, before you'd get snow, that you could put down 1 pound of nitrogen. This was thought to still be taken up by the root system at that point, so although the grass wasn't growing, it was still taking in that nitrogen and storing it to be really ready for the spring season. And most of the time in the spring you would notice it greening up much quicker, and this is my experience as well. With all of our fall fertilizing in the spring, you will notice a green up much quicker than the yards that don't have anything done in the fall. But for me, when temperatures get to around the highs of the upper 40s, that is when my grass completely stops growing. And then that is when I put down my fertilizer. That needs to really be watered in if possible, so time it with rain. Or you may have to drag out some hoses if you don't have an irrigation system on anymore. If you don't have an irrigation system at all, get out your hoses and water that in before everything gets frozen. Now for our last step, let's talk about a couple of extras that you can do into your yard that I've been incorporating the last couple of years. So one is Humic fulvic, and this year I've been adding some seaweed as well. So these are some of the simple lawn products that I've been using. You got this little box right here that we have that we just came out with. These are completely extra, but there's been a lot of talk about improving your soil and really focusing on that more than even just fertilizing and putting a bunch of fertilizer on the grass. So if you're interested in those products, I do have those available. Also, the Simple Lawn Soil Loosener, coming out of our summer season into the fall season, is a great time to apply that. Soils here can tend to get dry in summer. A product like that's going to help the water to penetrate down into the soil, be better used that way. So this is a great time to apply that too if you're interested in it. Totally optional steps. The fertilizer will get you a long way in this program. It has taken me from a yard here in 2012 that looked like this, and it's taken me up to my yard here in the last couple years that has looked like this. There's many programs out there that you can use that you will find success in. There's many types of fertilizers that you can use that you will find success with. I just personally know the results that I've seen in my own yard with my own experience. If you have questions on this process, let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching this video, and we'll see you next time.